Thank y'all for having us. We're excited to be here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how we work together to come up with a new brand direction and corporate positioning for Rackspace. We partnered with Alan from IDC. I was a client, he was the magic maker, and we came up with some good stuff. So let's go with that. So I don't know who knows much about Rackspace. Anybody? Hey, look, there's one, too. Look, she's got 2 arms in the air. She's very excited. 3, look at that. So Rackspace is cloud computing. We began about 16 years ago, started out a couple people in San Antonio in 1999. Since then have grown a ton. We've been on an exponential growth trajectory for the last 16 years, doubling revenue most years, and just accelerating. And that's because the managed hosting world, which is basically the set of servers that are hosting everything that's going on your phone, all that data's not sitting on your phone, it's sitting somewhere else. That's what cloud computing is. And so we've been riding this wave as the whole world has exploded in that direction in mobile devices over the last 16 years. But you get to a point where there's a lot of other players in the market and we get commoditized fairly quickly. And so just the last couple of years, we noticed growth was slowing. We weren't doubling, we were just kind of we went from 50% growth, 20% growth, 16% growth, and we were like, wait, something's happening here. The market's catching up and we need to figure out why people would buy Rackspace at the end of the day. What is it about us that makes us special? And we didn't really know. We'd sort of been drinking our own Kool-Aid for the last 16 years, and so it was finally time to step back and say, let's figure out what the market thinks about us. Let's figure out what they know about us, what they're interested in. And so we sought out and put these objectives together. We really need to understand our core brand health. How are we seen in the market? Were we even known? What was our awareness, unaided and aided? What was our consideration, our usage, our loyalty? Why were people buying us? What attributes did they associate with Rackspace? What attributes did we have permission in the market to talk about and not be seen as inauthentic? And instead, we really wanted to know what could we be in the market? What were we and what could we be? And finally, what we wanted to do was leverage all those brand insights to put them in the form of our corporate brand positioning, to define who we were and what we stood for. Oh, hello. Cool. Woo. And also influence a brand campaign and actually move the needle. So before we do that, we talked about what our internal assumptions were. We believed that our awareness, unaided, was probably somewhere around 12 to 15%. And that was based on, we'd seen some secondary research from Gartner, from Forrester, from 451. We'd had a lot of folks come in and give us, and we sort of were guessing based on different things we'd seen on consumption models and usage models, that's probably about where we were. The other thing that we assumed is that we were known as this managed cloud leader. So about 2 years ago, Gartner came out with their Magic Quadrant, and we were put in the upper right corner for cloud-enabled managed hosting, which in layman's terms essentially means managed cloud. Now what managed cloud is, different than just hosting, which is how we grew up. Managed means that there are big services on top of it. So not only are we going to host your data, we are going to serve you in the process. We're going to take care of making sure that all of your cloud and storage and data operations are taken care of for you. And so when Gartner put us as the leader in this space, we wrapped it around our logo. We put it as our headlines on our webpage. We put it at the top of all of our press releases, our analyst reports. Every time we talked to investors, everything we did, we wrapped around this managed cloud leader, this #1 leader in managed cloud. And we thought the message was getting across. But little did we know that it wasn't so much. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alan, and he'll take it from here.
Thanks, Kelly. So Kelly just mentioned their internal assumptions. You can see from the slide, the reality was very different. Right, so a mere 6% in unaided awareness, and far behind their core competitors, right? And keep an eye on those competitors because we'll talk about them later, but I mean, they're getting dwarfed by the big guys. And they're also seen as sort of just a hosting company. Ooh, that's bright. And not this managed cloud leader that Kelly had mentioned earlier. So what to do with this disconnect? Right, we were pretty sure, based on everything we knew from Rackspace, everything we were reading, everything that we knew at IDC, that Rackspace was doing better in the market than this story intimated. So we had this challenge. Pardon me. There we go. And so we went back and we looked at all the different data sources that we had at our disposal. So we had done an online survey, multi-country survey. We did in-person focus groups. We had access to syndicated reports, and we had an analyst. So IDC is an analyst firm, like some of the others that Kelly mentioned. And we have all these analysts covering everything from PCs to big data to cloud to whatever you could imagine. So the cloud analyst was our go-to expert on everything. She lived, breathes, and sleeps cloud. So our first sort of interesting aha moment came around the analysis. So imagine you were faced with this quandary, right? You think there's another story. What are some of the things that you would do? You probably start slicing the data, right? So you might slice it by size of the organization. We had small, medium, large. You might slice it by type of respondent, right? IT versus line of business decision makers. You might slice it by different countries you surveyed, right? We did all these things, and nothing worked. Nothing changed the story. It still was a strange sort of low awareness for Rackspace. And so we really brought in the analyst now for not just mere conversations, but like a really long brainstorming session. And she explained to us that in this cloud world, there are companies over here who are just dipping their toe, maybe putting like one thing in the cloud to try it out, and then companies on the other extreme that are all in, right? They've bought into the cloud, they're throwing everything up there. And it's a continuum, so there are companies in the middle as well. So she challenged us to try to find companies on that continuum and look for folks who are in the cloud and not the newbies. And so luckily we had a question in the survey that asked about the number of services or things your company has in the cloud. And so we took that question, we redesigned it into sort of an index, and we came up with the idea of power users, folks who had 5 or more things running in the cloud. And that became our new lens with which to look through all the survey data. And when we did that, we found a group called Power IT users, IT folks in large organizations who had 5 or more things in the cloud. And among that group, the Rackspace brand was twice as large in unaided awareness at 12%. And the other competitors that you saw earlier, Microsoft, IBM, et cetera, their numbers came down. So Rackspace was now on par with the big guys. So not only did we find a better story from a brand perspective, it was almost like a mini segmentation. We found the niche of the market where Rackspace was really strong from a brand perspective and on par with its competitors. So essentially, where they should fish. And sort of the next piece of it is, well, what do they do with that information, right? They know whom to target, but what do they say to them? And so, again, we went back to our second aha moment, and this was all around the idea of expertise. So in the survey, it came through loud and clear that customers really want an expert, right? That was the top customer need. And luckily, it was also a brand attribute that Rackspace owned. So that was great alignment, right? They can talk about being experts, and Power IT users really want an expert. But it wasn't just the only place we saw it. Luckily, in the focus groups, there was confirmation. So while we were testing messaging and attributes in the qualitative, I want them to be smarter than me was a quote that sort of encapsulates the whole thing, right? They didn't just want a vendor. They wanted a true cloud expert who can take them through it, hold their hand, and be smarter than they were, because cloud is still new and emerging. And so, again, the second aha moment came from triangulating these different data points. And with that, I'll pass it back to Kelly.
Thanks, Sam. And by the way, since we just ended on focus groups, I'll give a shout out to Ava right here in front of us. We ran into her here. She was actually the moderator of these very focus groups in New York about a year ago. So pretty exciting stuff. All right, so the new strategy. So based on all of the research and the analysis and the triangulation of everything that IDC did, we had a new strategy as a company. What started out as kind of the brand girl wanting to figure out what our brand was about turned into an entire positioning for the company. So our new strategy was to focus on these IT power users based on everything Alan just said. We identified what our KPI was, which was to move from a 12% number amongst those IT power users to 18% unaided brand awareness. Third, our perception, we really needed to shift that number. So from a hosting company to a managed cloud leader. And I say this because I described a little bit what managed means, but the other thing managed means is that you charge a premium, right? You cost more when you're managing the systems versus just deploying and storing. And so as a result, you have to shift that, otherwise you're just expensive. And so if people understand that you are not just a hosting provider, but now a managed leader, then you can charge that premium. But you need that brand credibility in the space to do that. And finally, in order to do that, to prove our value in managed, we needed to leverage our expertise as a differentiator. So all of that drove a few things for the company. So here we are a year later. We're about to launch a brand campaign in the second half of this year. That brand campaign will feature expertise as that core differentiator. It'll be focused entirely at IT power users. It'll be focused entirely on shifting that brand perception or that brand awareness number from 12% to 18%. And also on shifting that perception to managed cloud. The second thing we've done is we've rolled out a messaging hierarchy. So for a while, Rackspace sort of stood for lots of different things. And so all of our product materials, we're a large company, and so all of our product materials kind of told a different story. All of our sales enablement materials told a different story. The press, the corporate communications, they all sort of floundered a little bit. And so what we landed on was a very solid message hierarchy with expertise at the center of it, all written with the idea that you're already using multiple cloud services. It allows us to be much more targeted, much more specific, and hit right on those pain points that those customers are looking for. Third thing we did was we rolled out new corporate positioning. So our statement for what we stand for, who we are, what we're about, how Wall Street knows us is all consistent now. And it's all about that expertise leader, expertise at scale in the world's leading clouds. That's what it's all about. And then finally, our product roadmap. And this was a big one. So in terms of the most tangible changes, this would be that. In the last year, we've launched what we realized if our expertise was real, if our core differentiator was really expertise, then why should it be limited to our technology? So today, we not only offer our expertise on Rackspace technology, we also offer it on Microsoft Azure, which is one of our key competitors, now our partner, and on Amazon Web Services, our biggest competitor, and now our partner. And so now our expertise really becomes what we're about because we're sitting on top of everyone's clouds and not just our own, with a long roadmap to bring in the rest of the big players in the market. And finally, I'll turn it back to Alan, and he'll sum us up on all the research lessons learned.
Thank you, Kelly.
4 minutes minutes on the clock, so yeah, you have about 3 more.
So how's the conference going, everyone?
Yeah.
Anything interesting? All right, we'll catch up later. Although since we have a minute, that story about when you're young, you wanting to be old, I could relate. I've been there. Okay, so what did we learn? So obviously, one size does not fit all, especially at some of these conferences. And I love this conference, but it's so focused on new technologies that sometimes the vendors or the folks promoting these things talk about it like it's a panacea for everything that ails market research, right? I vehemently disagree with that approach. I think these new ideas and new methodologies are an addition to our toolkit and shouldn't replace anything because everything has the time and place, everything has pros and cons. And so the idea that one size fits all or a particular methodology is the methodology, I find somewhat objectionable. This is a very tech-driven conference, and so to even talk about in-person focus groups might be seen as blasphemous or passé or very old school, right? I have fallen in love again, and Kelly's heard me say this, with in-person focus groups. I really have. To hear really intelligent, really senior IT decision makers talk about cloud, argue about cloud. We had debates about whether Amazon is a managed cloud provider or not. And it was such a high level, I should say, of discourse that I've never seen that come out in like the online qual and other newer methodologies. Not to blast them, I'm sure they're great, and I've used some of them in the past, but getting people in a room to talk it out and fight it out was enlightening, really was. I'll talk about these next 2 points together, right? I think sometimes we're in a rush to do new primary, right? We're all researchers, we love new primary research, it's exciting. But there's a lot to be said for looking at what's already on the shelf, either from syndicated sources or even from research that's been done by the organization in the past, right? Now, we'll say that, yeah, it's not exactly the same market. It doesn't ask the questions I really want to know. We have all these reasons for why it doesn't quite work. But chances are there's some important insights we can pull out of those existing data sources. And so bringing those together is really important. And then, of course, the integration. I mean, it was really hard doing what we did. It seems kind of easy on the slide, but like back and forth and slicing the data and bringing in the analysts and brainstorming, it was hard work. And I think sometimes that's the challenge, right? Just let's get the report out, we're on a deadline. And it really is worth it if we take the time, which brings me to the last point, which is to take a fresh look. There's definitely a parallel universe where we handed off that 6% story to Rackspace, and that was it. Right? Imagine you're under a deadline, you're under pressure, the client is breathing down your neck. You got to deliver. And it's to Rackspace credit that they sort of gave us that extra time and let us pour through the results, because if you're able to write that first story and then take a step back, whether it's 24 or 48 hours or whatever the time frame, have a glass of wine, think about it when you're jogging. Like, it really, really helps. Ask any sort of creative writer how often they went with their first draft. It's probably 0. But as researchers, we feel this pressure to get it out there quickly. So I think if we can take the time, if we have that luxury, it's really worth it, because I think inspired insights will come out of it. And with that, I guess we'll take questions.
Thanks, Alan and Kelly. So who's got some questions? All right, we got one right here, and then we're gonna have another up front.
Hi, I just wanted to say thanks for your presentation. I'm a student right now, and it seems like you did a really kind of like methodical, like by the book study, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. I didn't plant that. We didn't plant that.
No,
right?
we didn't. That was great, though.
It makes sense.
Drinks are on me.
Yeah. My question is, what do you plan to do for follow-up? How do you plan to measure brand awareness, especially now that you're partnered with your competitors? What do you expect to see for the aftermath?
Yeah, I mean, as part of the brand campaign we're rolling out this fall, our top 2 KPIs are about moving the unaided brand awareness needle, as we talked about here, and about shifting the perception. And so we'll do a combination of, we'll do kind of, monthly analytical tracking just through our site and some leading indicators we do around search indexes and that kind of thing. But we will also lap this same research that we did with IDC. We'll do it again on an annual basis. And so, which should be about now, but because we're just now kicking off the campaign, we'll wait about 6 months and we'll run it again in the winter. And the idea is that last year it was really about getting a baseline. In all 15 years of Rackspace's history, they had never once measured the brand. So they had no idea how it was doing, how it was moving. So it was really just like an eye-opening kind of education on what was the situation. And now we actually have a baseline with which to measure. We'll repeat the survey, we'll repeat the types of insights. And we're continually doing, we just had some focus groups a couple weeks ago, just in a local community, just in San Antonio and Austin, just to kind of keep that voice going before we launched some messaging. It was really minor, but what we've done is kind of become addicted to research and realize that the more we know, like data is king. Like you can't, it's democratizing in an organization, right? It allows us to kind of not go by personalities or level or title in a company to make decisions, but really based on what customers are saying and what they're asking for. So from that perspective, I'd say we'll continue to do more of this.
And I'll just a 30-second follow-up. I'll just say I think that's part of what we're most proud of. The fear of every researcher, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, is that you do this great study or any study, right, and it sits on the shelf, quote unquote. Nobody takes action on it. Nobody does anything with it. It doesn't change anyone's mind. So to see like all these great things that Rackspace is doing based off the research that we did together is just really, a great thing to see, and we're all collectively proud of it.
Yeah, after we got the results, I took it and presented it to our CEO and all of the C-suite at Rackspace. And when I finished, they asked a ton of questions, and when I finished, they said, whatever you do, don't put this on the shelf to collect dust. Like, turn this into strategy and go run with it, because otherwise it was a wasted effort. And so that's exactly what we've been doing.
We still have another question up front?
Yeah, just a quick question. Did you ever go back to that, I guess it was study or the company that gave you the #1 managed cloud service to see if that was among that same target segment of IT users?
That's a great question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, I'll have to ask. So Gartner does it amongst their IT decision makers. Anybody from Gartner in here? This seems like a place where Gartner would be. No? Okay. I was like, maybe they could answer. Anyways, step on anybody's toes. But yeah, so we haven't gone back to them. We did win the leadership position again. So it's been 2 years in a row. It was either 14 and 15 or 15 and 16. And they did validate that. And it is amongst IT decision makers. And I think it is focused more on the larger mid-market and enterprise segment, which is what this power user group was focused on as well. Those are the people who tend to outsource more services. And so, but that's a great question. We'll have to do that and validate if we still stand the leader in that group. Anyone else? All I see is lights, so if there's a hand,
I have one more question. So was there one particular data source from which you got the greatest insights of all the ones that you used?
So I'll say, not a data source per se, but again, having that analyst. So we're an analyst firm, and having somebody right there who really is an expert in cloud, lives it, breathes it, goes to all these companies to tell them about cloud. Having her insights, because we're all researchers, and we can follow tech, but you can't replicate somebody who lives and breathes cloud. And so I think having her on the extended team to challenge us and be a sounding board for us was sort of the secret sauce.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's one, I continue to reach out to her often. Anytime I have a question about stuff going on in the market or new segmentation or new rankings or how this segment's getting cut up or what the size of this particular vertical is, I reach out to her often. And so having a human with expertise, I think trumps any kind of automation all day long.
You didn't mean to say Trump, right?
No. Oh, all right. And on that note,
Or maybe I
thank
did.
you so much. Give a hand to Kelly and Ellen.
All right.